think of the period of time between 1819 and Alabama's statehood and 1861 and the beginning of the Civil War, we often think of beautiful plantations and slavery. In our earlier lessons, we've talked about some of the beautiful antebellum architecture of Alabama, patterned after the ancient Greeks and Romans. Yet, don't be misled by these beautiful images. Let's look a little more closely at history and see how the majority of the people lived during these days. By 1860, just before the start of the Civil War, 95 out of every 100 people in Alabama lived in rural areas. Few, however, owned large plantations. Most were middle class or yeoman farmers. Most of them lived in log cabins or wooden houses, and they raised cotton and other crops. Many of us living in Alabama today had ancestors who were among these yeoman farmers. It is true, of course, that there were also wealthy planters who owned at least half of all the slaves, 1/3 of all the property we call real estate, and almost 1/3 of all personal property. We do know that there's another misconception, however, about black people. Black people were not all slaves. In fact, in 1860 in Alabama, there were 2,690 blacks who were free. Some of these owned slaves themselves. They were usually the city dwellers. We think probably the ones who owned slaves were the ones who had purchased their own relatives from the original slave owners. When blacks were freed or managed to purchase their freedom, they still had a rough time of it. Education, even reading, was illegal for all blacks. Free blacks were also not allowed to associate with slaves, and in many instances were encouraged to leave the state. Should a free black be found guilty of any major law violation, he could actually be sold back into slavery. It is difficult to look back and try to explain or understand the institution of slavery, yet we can be sure of at least one cause. It was economics. In Alabama during these days, the average free person had more wealth than those in the North. This was largely due to agriculture, and agriculture provided this economic base through the use of low-cost slave labor. Some slave owners treated them with care, providing proper food and medical attention. After all, the slaves represented a major investment. Others, however, were quite cruel, frequently delivering harsh punishments, poor living conditions, and on a few occasions even selling families apart. In either case, slavery was certainly difficult to endure. We all want the freedom to make the major decisions in our lives and to live without fear. As we said, slavery was linked to economics, and economics to agriculture, especially in the South. Cotton was king, or the primary crop. You've heard this expression before, I'm sure. And this same title for King Cotton was used on the front page of the Huntsville Democrat in its September the 26th, 1860 issue. Old Cotton is king, boys, aha! With his looks so fleecy and white, he shines among kings like a star, and his is the scepter of right. Old Cotton the king has no care, no queen and no heir to his throne, no courtiers his triumphs to share. He rules his dominions alone. Old Cotton, the merry old boy, like smoke from the pipe in his mouth. His years glide away in their joy, at home in the warm sunny South. Old Cotton will pleasantly reign when other kings painfully fall, and ever remain the mightiest monarch of all. Then here's to old Cotton the king. His true loyal subjects are we. We'll laugh and we'll quaff and we'll sing. A jolly old fellow is he. In our schools, we learn to read, write, and to speak the English language. We probably use the same English books that are used in other parts of the country, but if you listen to the spoken English, you find that we speak quite differently. We call this a different dialect. Other races and cultures also speak a dialect, and each one is unique and beautiful. Perhaps this is the reason Sidney Lanier, the Southern poet, chose the black dialect to write his poem, The Power of Prayer.
Who called me? Listen down the river, Dinah. Don't you hear somebody hollering, "Ho, Jim, ho"? My Sarah died last year. Is it the black angel done come to call old Jim from here? My stars, they can't be Sarah. Shh, just listen, Dinah, now. What can be coming round that bend or making such a row? Just bellowing like a pawing bull, then squealing like a sow. The Lord of mercy sakes alive, just hear, ka-woof, ka-woof. The devil's coming round that bend. He's coming sure enough, splashing up the water with his tail and with his hoof. I was a powerful scared, but never some less I ain't going to run away. I'm going to stand stiff-legged for the Lord this blessed day. You screech and swish the water, Satan. I was a-gwine to pray. I was worthless as the rotten pole of last year's fodder stack. The rheumatiz done bit my bones. You hear them crack and crack. I can't sit down without grunting, like 'twas breaking on my back. What used to wheel when hub and spokes is warped and split and rotten? What used this dried up cotton stalk when life done picked the cotton? I was like a word somebody said and then done been forgotten. Stop. If I don't believe the devil's going up the stream, just now he's squealing down there, hush. That's a mighty weakly scream, yes sir. He's gone, he's snort way off like in a dream. Oh, glory, hallelujah to the Lord that reigns on high. The devil's fairly scared to death. He's done gone flying by. I knowed he couldn't stand that prayer. I felt my master nigh. I tell you, Dinah, just as sure as you standing there, when folks start praying, answer angels drop down through the air. Yes, Dinah, where'd you be now, just setting for that prayer?